Hello everyone, and welcome for this live on XCP-ng 8.3. The official release is finally there, so we are truly excited here at Vates and the entire team. So we also took the opportunity to bring some of the developer of this release with us, people who participated to actually build that release, and you will see so many things were done during those years to prepare it and to be sure it works, it's stable, and so on. As a forward, I would say in intro, that's the final release in the 8.x platform series. So that's truly important because it's like, it's a start. We made a release, but that's also the end of the journey on those 8 versions. And the future is really exciting because obviously now we have to maintain 2 releases at once, but we are also preparing for the future, and that's really, really great. So as usual, it's easy to download. You go to click on the download link. You will have the ISO. That's like every previous release we've done. Nothing really new there. You also got a net install version that you could get. So you go on xcp-ng.org website, you click on the download or in this link, and you could get the 8.3 here. You could get the net install here in this link. You have the chasm and everything in this page. So something that I will probably repeat a lot during this live is please get to read the release notes, because it took a lot of time to write them. As you can see, there's many things. It's like the most detailed version of it. So if you want to make the migration, if you're interested about what's inside in details and so on, that's the place to go. The blog post is more like, focus on announcement, things that are truly visible and so on. But, release notes are clearly something really important to read, and we put a lot of efforts to get there, and it took a lot of time to write them. And Sam told me he spent 1 full week to write them in details. So yeah, go ahead, read them, and many times in this live and in the blog post, you will see a link to tell you to go there for more details. Let's talk quickly about some numbers, because sometimes it's hard to understand all the efforts that has to be done to get to the point where you release something. It's like, giving birth somehow. It took a lot of cards. So cards are like issues, if you like. We use a Kanban board where we could, write down everything we need to do to get to that release. So that's a lot of tasks that has been done. We use Koji as a build platform, and there's more than 1,000 builds that has been done through this build platform, which is really huge. And also, it's, I think, the time to say a big thanks to the entire community who spent a lot of time to give us feedback about 8.3 since the first release we've made. So we are counting a lot of messages on the dedicated thread, but there's also many, discussions spin off from this thread. So it's a lot of feedback from the users since day one. We got the first alpha version, and frankly, we are pretty happy with the state of it because it was kind of rather stable from the start. But one of the big difference with the previous release, and I think we'll probably discuss that more in details, is the amount of work we spent to build this release with automation, continuous integration, automated tests, and so on. And this kind of work is sometimes and often invisible, because in the end, you have something that works, that's cool, but it's hard to just imagine the amount of work that is needed to get there, to synchronize everyone to be there. So that's also why I truly, like to thank everyone involved inside and outside Vates for helping to make it real. This was truly real teamwork that has been done to make it, and we'll have the opportunity to have some feedback from people who contributed internally. A quick reminder, as we're scrolling down the blog post, is 8.2 is still the LTS, at least for now, and even if 8.3 is really stable and you want to stay stable as far as we can go, 8.3 will be more the version where we will include the new features that we have in the pipes, while 8.2 will continue to have bug fixes and security fixes. Obviously, you will also have the security and bug fixes in 8.3, but plus the new features. So depends on your approach with your IT infrastructure. You might want to stay on 8.2, or you might want to explore 8.3 and then enjoy new features and maybe even discover more features coming in the future. This part is, I would say, rather important to also understand in which context we've built that release. So it took years to do it. And I would say vTPM is very different now than it was like 2 or 3 years ago when we started the work with this release. And the main difference is we grew a lot, and the Broadcom VMware opportunity for us is truly now starting to be felt in many aspects in the way of vTPM, the way we're growing, the number of employees joining the company, the revenue we're generating, the fact that we have a training certification program, a partner program, we've been the Gartner Guide, and so on and so on. So those are all great news showing that we'll continue to develop features, improve the existing release we have, preparing future releases, but we can do that with more people on board. But I know it's never enough, so we continue to grow to tackle more problems in parallel. But I think this release is like, I think Sam told me just like a few minutes before, a few hours before, it's like the end of a journey, but the start of another journey. And I think this release represents something for vTPM as being able to go to the end of something and start something else, even if now it's maintenance, new features, and so on. It's kind of like a cycle. So for us, it's a really important, I would say, moment in the life of the company doing this release. Another, I would say, digression, but it's also something, I won't read you that, obviously, but just give you a bit of a feedback on how the journey started when we made the fork, the initial fork. As a reminder, the story started when we've met the product manager at Cambridge and discussed with them about the future of Zen Server, and they were like, stopping to do open source because it's not something they truly understand or want to do. And then we truly never had the idea before this meeting to make the fork of Zen Server. But then they kind of pushed us to go there because we had no choices, and they were like a bit laughing at us about the idea of forking Zen Server. And then, it was like kind of a challenge to me to say, okay, let's do it. And all in all, somehow I'd like to thank them, because otherwise the adventure we're living right now would have been really different without doing the virtualization platform under Zen Orchestra. So the challenge they kind of brought to us was exciting, and that's one of the things that helped to change vTPM in the end. So it's a bit thanks to us, but thanks, like, we thank Broadcom today in a way that it's kind of pushing us to do more and to do better due to the circumstances. And as I said in the blog post, we truly appreciate the work we do with all the developers working on the upstream projects, all the developers working even at Zen Server and so on. And it's not the problem there. It's just really hard to have a decent technical collaboration with the business entity. But I mean, again, it's something good in the end, because we learn to do things by ourselves, and we are going strong and being more independent as time passes, as we're growing, as we have more expertise. So yeah, it's a good thing in the end. And we, despite that, still consider Zen servers as friends, and we hope that we could, let's say, spread the load on some things to improve together instead of doing things twice. That's always more efficient, and we believe in collaboration is more efficient than pure competition. So let's transition now to more practical stuff. Upgrading from previous releases is rather simple in terms of ways to do it. It's insert the ISO and upgrade from XCP 8.0 or 8.1 or 8.2 up to 8.2.1, and then follow the instruction and upgrade. And why this is great to use the ISO? Because it will use a backup partition, meaning that if something is wrong with 8.3, then you can roll back safely to 8.2 without losing any data and so on. So that's the way to do it. And that's the way that is supported. And if you want to tinker, if you want to play, sure, but then it won't be supported. However, if you use the pre-release of XCP that is more recent than or equal to the RC2, Yum should do the trick. So anyway, if you have a question about this on the forum, we still have the dedicated topic to learn more about it. And let's switch to what's new in XCP 8.3. So I would say obvious stuff that we call visible change. So when I say visible, I mean visible without using anything else than XCP itself, without using any client to connect to it and so on, is when you will install it, you will see the new theme. So you may followed us since maybe years, and you know that we made a huge change in our graphic identity, and now it's more streamlined between all our products and Orchestra, Lite, XCP, and so on. And so it uses this new identity that we hope you like, which is like space related, rockets, satellites, planets, and so on. And it goes down to the text UI console with the new theme. We took some time to be sure it stay visible, like the new shell, which is also having those colors. And the plus with it is also really easy to spot if you are running by default on an 8.2 or an 8.3, which is a kind of bonus to quickly see what you're running, even if it's clearly demonstrated with the numbers in the text UI. But still, we really love that kind of new look that is, let's say, really nicely mixed with the rest of our identity. The other piece of software that people really like and really hope to be there for the release is XOLite. So as a reminder, XOLite is the small lightweight version of Xen Orchestra in the sense that is meant to just access locally your cluster, your pool, and do the, let's say, minimal requirements to either bootstrap your big infrastructure or to manage when you have only a few hosts or one pool, one cluster. So when you go to the web in your web browser with the IP address of the host, now you can log in with the same password used to log in as SSH, and then you will access the dashboard with all the details on your infrastructure, with the number of hosts, the VMs with the tree view, finally, we'll say. And if you click on the VM, you will have access to the console, you have some stats and so on. So it's still a work in progress, but if you also follow us on the Xen Orchestra side, you will see that we reuse some shared components between XOLite and XO6, the new UI that we're working on. And we expect to have new features like network management before the end of the year. So we'll create all your networks, configure the IP address of the host, create VLANs, and so on, directly through XOLite. So we hope you like this interface. There is truly like nice tools that you can already use to have basic lifecycle, access to VM console. You could pop out consoles. There is dark mode, light mode, and so on and so on. And this is meant to be improved in the future with more and more features, as long as it's local to the cluster, and then it won't save any specific state, unlike Xen Orchestra, which is meant to do more complex tasks like load balancing, backups, and so on and so on. Let's move on to the Windows 11 vTPM support. So credits to Xen server team who made that work. So they built the code that enabled the vTPM, so the virtual TPM that is required to run on Windows 11. And so it works only with UEFI-based VM. And I mean, by default, if you create a Windows 11 template, it will automatically trigger the vTPM module and so on. So it's rather simple. We just made, let's say, some UI things, settings available in the in Xen Orchestra to be sure it's exposed. So that's also something as a small digression is during the time of the release, we spent a lot of time trying to be sure that on day one of the release, Xen Orchestra will provide will expose, let's say, all the features that were created in the first place in XCP 8.3. So it was also, I would say, a lesson learned between XCP and XO teams to work, even more closely than before, because we need to, detect which version to display which feature and so on and so on. So that was truly, you know, a kind of a challenge, but a good one. And then we prevail in the end. We have something that works day one, supporting all the XCP-ng 8.3 features without even, you know, having to wait for a future release of Xen Orchestra. That's the bonus of working with both teams, you know, internally inside the same company. Another huge amount of work that we spent to build 8.3, and this time no credit for anyone else than us, is to build IPv6 support for the Dom0. So you could use already IPv6 for your VMs, but then you wouldn't have IPv6 for the Dom0 itself. So it was a lot harder than one could imagine, like, well, just flip on IPv6, you know, and it works. No, it's far more complex because you have a kind of a entire tool stack that wasn't meant to work with IPv6 by default, and you had very many defaults that will go back to IPv4, or, you know, things meant to work only for IPv4. So it takes a lot of time to see what's needed, to test it, and then to discover that in some cases you might have issues. So by the way, we have a list of IPv6 related issues that are available in the release notes. So if you want to use IPv6, keep that in mind. It works, but there's some corner cases or edge cases where you might have some surprises. So that's why it's better to know that before trying something without having any context. Okay, moving on to the hardware support. So this is kudos to the community about this, because if you know that at vTPM we are more focusing the, let's say, classical data center targets, then in the end, it doesn't really matter to get support for small Intel NUCs or, you know, mini machines and things like this, or even 2.5 gig network devices and so on and so on. But we are truly open to help the community, or even doing some efforts on our side to be sure it will work, to include drivers, to even test on our side. I mean, I spent some time to purchase those little machines to make sometimes one myself to see if it works, because we truly think that is important that our community could play with XCP-ng at whatever scale they want, because then if it works at your scale, you could use it at the lab, you can explore, you can learn how it works, and then in a professional context, that would make sense to go also on XCP. So that's why we are trying to be smart, and even if it's not a top priority, to spend some time and effort to get non-server grade devices to work in XCP. So for this, it's also kudos for the community, because we had direct contribution from people external to vTPM doing, you know, drivers integration and also tests and so on. So a big thanks, because it helps a lot when we don't have to do all the work to get it working. We also added support for 4K native disks, so it's not, let's say, a perfect solution, but it works rather well. There are small penalties in terms of performances and trade-off, but that's not a real big deal. The way is now Dell and other providers are providing per cards or thing like this that are only compatible with 4K. So we had to find a solution, and it works rather well. We will test that, and there's no weird behavior or whatnot. It just works. Oh, this feature is rather cool too. This is typically the kind of features that requires a good collaboration between the Xen Orchestra team and XCP-ng team. So we had the idea that for now, PCI pass-through had to be done manually. You had to connect to the host. You had to manually enter command line, and so on and so on. So what we decided to do is try to get some level of automation to do that through the Xen API, the ZAPI. So it requires we do the contribution upstream, but also to expose those new features directly to the UI of Xen Orchestra. And we did it, and we did it even before 8.3 was released, and it works rather well. Sure, you have to reboot as soon as you hide the device from the Dom0, but then it means that it's a lot easier to do PCI pass-through to a VM, and that's not a common use case, but still we found that it could improve by a lot, the quality of life on using our platform without having to enter command lines and so on. So I won't go into details for the next ones, but they are truly interesting too. when you do a host evacuate, for example, when you want to reboot a host or when doing rolling pool update and so on, the evacuate feature is migrating all VM out to another host within the same pool. But previously, it was only using the management interface. So we added something in the ZAPI by ourselves to provide potentially the choice of the network. And obviously, it's also displayed in XenOrchestra, so that's great. And more than this, we also added an option to configure the concurrency, let's say the number of VMs that you will migrate out at the same time, which is depending on your load on the machine, could be sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4. It depends on the load. If you have higher load with your machines, then it's better to maybe do 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 and so on. So this is also some addition we added by ourselves, both in the Xen API and in XenOrchestra. In the similar fashion, the way to make a VM snapshot by excluding a specific VM disks is now doable thanks to our modification in ZAPI and in XenOrchestra. So directly now in XenOrchestra, when you put the noback name, it will exclude it from the backup. So previously it was done in the snapshots, but not in the backup. Now, if you say noback when you do a backup, which is doing a snapshot, then it won't snapshot the disk itself. So it's rather great when you have disks that you just don't want to snapshot for a backup, just want to export. And you might also try to use raw disks in a backup that would be excluded. So the VM will snapshot only the snapshot table disk, let's say like this. Another one, which is this way, let's say partly thanks to Zen server team and part done by XO, is to have an information when they coalesce done on the VDI chain. You know, when you do snapshot and you remove it, the chain has to coalesce, and then you want to know that if it happens, because it's a good sign, but also it takes some resources, so you want to be aware. And now you know when it will be done because it will display in the task. So rather simple, but tremendously helpful when you want to know what's going on your storage. So we added other features that were sometimes made by us, sometimes by Zen server. For example, the migration stream compression is a feature made by Zen server that we expose in XenOrchestra, which could be helpful if you have a very low bandwidth. I just had host evacuation improvements. Another fun stuff about 8.3 is we could include some more recent version of some software like SmartMon tools, and a more recent version of the package supports JSON formats, which is truly helpful to build new plugins. And those new plugins are able, for example, to return the disk health status through the smart information. So as you can see, that's a demonstration that 8.3 is a platform that we use to bring new stuff and will continue to bring new stuff like this. Oh, I know that we also spent a huge amount of work to improve the installer, and it was like not a drama, but complex, let's say, with our friends at Zen server, because first the installer wasn't on GitHub, but we fixed some bugs and we couldn't contribute upstream. And then they realized that would be nice then if we could contribute upstream to fix some of the bugs. So they made it on GitHub, but then we are pushing for more modification that are kind of not reviewed right now, or they are not interested to. So, you know, it's not always easy to contribute when someone doesn't cooperate a lot with it. But still, we spend a lot of efforts to improve the installer, to refresh the memtest version, which is truly useful. Believe me, I just spent a support ticket last week about someone having a problem with their unit, and then they did a memtest and it was the RAM. So it's always good when you have a problem or crash to use it. It's a great tool, and it takes not a lot of time to find if you have a problem on your memory. So with various improvement, obviously the IPv6 supports, better warnings, and so on. So I think we'll maybe even talk a bit in the conclusion about it, because it was rather, to me at least, one of the big efforts we have to make to get this 8.3 release done. And then another big topic, which is getting secure boot fine. Again, it was a complex story with Zen server, because it wasn't open source in the first place. So we had to build it ourselves, and we spent a reasonable amount of efforts to do it, our own implementation. And finally, they decided to open source it. So yeah, many changes. Also, we had to agree on the way we'll deal with certificates and things like this. So it's really complex. Go read the release notes about it. And I think we found a solution that is both convenient and secure, because we do not want you to boot a VM with secure boot thinking it is secure while it is not. So we have to find, the right balance between wanting enough the user to be sure that you won't be fooled by the fact maybe it's enabled, but somehow it doesn't avoid the VM booting and so on. We wanted to truly be sure this won't happen. So that's why we spent a lot of time to engineer a functional solution that will be easy for everyone. And then there's many other details that you could read by yourself, and I think it's not important. Something important to understand right now is XOSTOR is not available yet on 8.3, so please wait a bit if you are using it before migrating. We are deprecating some stuff, and there's a dedicated session if you want to read it about all those details. There's some non-issue. We have a list of non-issue, and as I said earlier, it's mostly related to some use cases of IPv6. So read it carefully, but it's not that much in the end. And then I think that's, before talking about the conclusion, I think that's the right opportunity to discuss with a bit with Sam about your feeling about this release. I mean, what really changed between the last release you made, the 8.2? I mean, when I said release, I'm not counting the minor releases, but let's say the big releases. The main difference is you had to go through when we've made to the 8.3. The main things that made you consider 8.3 different than the previous one. I mean, you were already there for the 7.4. You were there since almost the start of XCP. So what's your, I would say, I know it's very recent, so it's not with a lot of insight, but just like while you are there, mostly your feelings and impression on those releases on 8.3.
Yeah. So waiting 2 seconds so that
Sure.
I'm there. Yes. So the first of all, many things changed. So let's try to have a small list. The first one is the way it was developed as you evoked, in relationship with Zen server, a relationship which is both fruitful and difficult at times, but really interesting. And what changed is that for previous releases, we would wait for a new Zen server release, and then we would rush so that we can make it a fully open source solution as XCP-ng, and this took generally around 4 months. But here, what changed is that they had a preview, and this started a 2-year-long journey towards our final release. So instead of updating just once, we continuously updated over during the development process.
Yes, so this also explains the number of pre-release we've made, and my impression is I confirm that, but it's like every pre-release was like the amount of work like for previous final release, right?
So John from our team is saying that we are quite talented. Thanks for the flowers. That might be a French idiom. Anyway, so yeah, so the fact that we worked closely with the development version of Zen server, it was interesting because we could make changes before it's too late, and this happened, for example, for the IPv6 support and for the UEFI support. And we could also provide feedback. Our broad user community found various bugs that escaped the already really big QA there is at Zen server. So we could report or fix bugs, and the counterpart was a lot more work, because it's like we had a rolling release. Yes, it was not a production release, but right from the alpha release, we had users who installed it on their labs, and we handled issues like there were production issues almost.
Yeah, true. We spent a lot of efforts to be sure that we almost consider, like you said, that all our purposes, we treated our community on that like it was production. And to be fair, maybe with some exceptions, I had the impression that we had a great stability level even since the alpha one, right? I mean, I don't remember catastrophic big issues, mostly inconvenient stuff detected and some problems, but not at scale that would affect all our testers at once or thing like this. So it was like, I don't know, how do you remember how many pre-release we've made in total already? I don't remember the number.
1 alpha, 2 betas, and 2 release candidates.
Yes. So yeah, and you can imagine,
and an internal alpha before the public alpha.
yes, and that's why also I think we spend that much time trying to and building automation in CI to be sure that every time we release something new, we make tests, and at least on things we are testing, there's no regression, and so we are more confident that it works. So yeah, we have even users in the chat telling that they were installing since March 2023 from a Flag Pyro. So yes, sure, and I think we're kind of proud of that, but that tells you the amount of work that has to be done to get that results. And as you said, what's also important to notice is, despite the Zen server test infrastructure that is truly impressive, they made you can find that on YouTube during the last Zen Summit. They had a talk about the size of their test infrastructure. That's truly impressive. It's really huge. But still, regardless that, as Sam said, we found sometimes bugs they wouldn't spot by themselves. So this tells how great the community is, because it's exactly thanks to this community that we managed to spot those problems and to be aware about them rather sooner. So yeah, I think that's great. Anything else that crossed your mind about this release that for you, Sam, is vastly different than the previous ones? I mean, you started by doing a release by yourself, and now the team is a lot bigger. So
that was the next next point
go ahead.
I was going to address. Yes. At the same time as we had to handle a new way to develop XCP-ng in relationship with changes at Zen server, and also at times unknowns on the future of the way they were going to work. At the same time, we grew the team a lot, so that's also something that had an impact on us, especially on the ones who were here already, because yes, in the end, the new team is capable of doing a lot more than the old smaller team. But the transition, it's always something that has a cost for the people who are already there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, meaning that to me it's another success of the release, meaning we were able to grow while we were working on it. while getting new people on board, because as you said, new people, when they start, they are not trained, they do not understand all the tooling, how to work, they will maybe even develop new stuff and so on. So this has an impact. So despite that, we use that time to develop this release to build the team while we were building also the tools around it to be able to ship faster. So it was like a double challenge to get to the end of that. That's also, I think, why we are so happy to get that release done in the end, because all those efforts finally pays off. And now, as we reach, I wouldn't say critical mass, because there's always more people that could be added to the company. Sure, we just tripled the number of people working at vTPM in those 2 last years. That still, it means we managed to build the core, to have people that become specialized, and we made all of that while creating the release. And to me, that's like a proof that we could do now with that even faster in the future, as there's more things to do, but still it's a good proof that we made it in terms of growing while delivering in the end, which is not easy. It's like juggling while doing a bicycle and something like this. Any other stuff that you have in mind, Sam, about this release that you want to share?
Well, I could probably find more, but what about we ask the others if there's something,
Yeah.
in this release that they want to, I don't know, that was special to them, or that was surprising to them.
Yeah, that could be interesting to have maybe I don't know, David or Thierry point of view, as they were joining the team after we started the release process, at least for the first versions and so on, and that has been dragged into it somehow, because it maybe not was the initial target to do things related to the release. You have any go ahead, I don't know, David or Thierry, I think, to share your feedback, your feeling about that?
Well, on my side, as I'm also trying to handle mostly the security side, we can say that we're putting in place various stuff to try to improve our process relating to security updates. So there is a lot more to do, but we're improving, and we're having more manpower coming to help us too. So that should allow us to get a good progress. That's something that we didn't talk about yet, but as you said, Samuel single-handedly managed the previous releases mostly, and he also had to handle the security side of things. So that's quite a lot of burdens that we're trying to share now. So I guess we're in the right way to make things better. Otherwise, no, I don't really have a precise point on
Okay.
8.3 that I could add to.
So in short, I think we could say that we were using that release to structure, let's say, as we are structuring the company by having more people, structuring more the team, as I said, to have some more specialist workflows and so on. All of that was like something important to be able to scale internally and to be able to deliver efficiently while having new resources and working for the future. So yeah, I think that was really something important. And by the way, we were talking about the past, but what about the future? Obviously, the future is will, as I said in the intro, will continue to add new features. It will be, let's say, easier to get those new features, as it's not an LTS. So we have exciting announcements to come in the future in many different ways, even just plugins or whatever you can have. That it was kind of, let's say, not really a good idea to add to something that should be ultra stable like an LTS. And even if it's the end of the 8.x series, and we are opening a door to the next major release, which we just started to, let's say, discuss / think / design, there's still a lot of work for 8.3 to get those new features, to keep up with the security updates and so on. So as usual, keep an eye on the blog post to not miss anything related to that, because now we are more and more efficient to work with those security issues, and we are faster to answer. And if it's not done for you to update in the end, that wouldn't be good. So keep an eye on it, stay up to date. If you have any issue with 8.3, probably keep the existing thread, which is really rich about the feedback we have for it. Maybe we'll rename it. So I'm seeing a question about for how long the 8.3 will be around. Well, that's a good question. There's some unknowns, but what we want to do in the end, from, let's say, a user perspective, is you will still have a stable version available if we have another version. So whatever, in which order it will be done, with the end of potentially 8.2, at the end of 8.3, and so on, we'll be sure that you always have a stable solution or choice to have to avoid any problems. For example, if we got the 9 version that is out, maybe that's the right time to stop doing new features and freeze the 8.3, or maybe we'll decide to freeze it a bit before. So to be sure, then well, as usual, the main target for us is stability. When I'm discussing with many people around, people transitioning from VMware or for Hyper-V or for whatever other platform, when I get their feedback after a bit and why you choose our platform, is the answer is because it works. And it sounds a simple answer, but it's not, because something that just works demands a huge amount of work, and we want to keep that. It's really easy to break something that is working, and it takes a lot of efforts to keep something working. So that's why, all in all, in the end, we'd like to get something stable available for the users, regardless what's going on in which order. So Sam just added that at some point we'll have less changes in 8.3, as I said, and we'll probably label it LTS for a few years. So you will have confidence to continue to run that in production, while maybe we'll have first alpha of 9.0. And it might have far more corner cases because it's a new major release. Like we'll probably have a far different kernel and different things. So yeah, this time alpha might be a true alpha. We hope not, but that's possible. So that's why leaving you the choice to get something that you can count on, that would be mission critical, is our target. So that's the priority number 1. Okay, so I don't know if there's other people right in the vocal chat here wanted to add something or not. If not, I will wait for a few seconds and watch the chat for also potential questions, if there's any in the chat, for the next minute or so. So it seems nothing specific from our side. Reading the chat, no question right now. So it's probably because we were really clear, hopefully, and you have everything to read in details, more time you spend to read the release notes, less surprises. So please do it. Thanks also to everyone involved in that release. Again, it was a tremendous amount of work, but thankfully it was shared by both more people inside Vates, but also our community, which never disappoints. It's really, really cool to have such a vibrant community providing feedback, just not for the release, but also all our updates that are pre-released a few days before it's out. So that's really, really cool, and we hope to continue to grow that way. We have a true ambition to be one of the leaders in the virtualization market, server virtualization market. And I mean, with a team like this and a community like this, I'm confident we will make it all together. So thank you very much for attending this live or for watching this video after it was uploaded on YouTube. So we truly hope to find you on our forums, and have a great day then, and see you around.